Okay, Star Wars Episode 3. We did it. Is that lighting okay? Is that a bit better? That's a bit better. We did it. We watched it for the umpteenth time, 20th anniversary. Still epic. Lots of clapter throughout the clapter. Clapping and laughter. Clapping and laughter throughout the film. Especially in key moments and key sayings like by Obi-Wan Kenobi,
I have the high ground.
I have the high ground towards the end. Earlier on, I have a bad feeling about this, that kind of thing. People are clapping all over the place. Lots of people with lightsabers. The cinema was full, which is so interesting that a 20-year-old film can pack a cinema.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas these new films that come out these days, cinemas are mostly empty. So the narrative of the prequel trilogy is what we're going to talk about very briefly now, especially Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. I'll say a few things maybe about Episodes 1 and 2, and I'll turn to Chris to analyse this film. So, obviously, in Episode 1, we have the articulation of a narrative by George Lucas, which is very broad in scope. It's galactic in scope, okay? So, while it starts humbly with two Jedis being sent to negotiate with the Trade Federation who've blockaded the planet Naboo because of I don't know what laws they wanted to change in the Senate. That's right, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually they end up on the planet Naboo to be led around by a Gungan. A whole team of them is put together by the end with Jar Jar Binks, it's Qui-Gon Jinn, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, and they need parts of their ship. They end up on Tatooine. Qui-Gon discovers the 9-year-old Anakin Skywalker, who's Force sensitive, who's been conceived via the Force, via again the midichlorians that are a symbiotic entity that is a kind of intermediary or mediator between the Force and living creatures that exist in every living creature. So these midichlorians generated Anakin Skywalker in the womb of his mother Shmi, which is basically a virgin birth motif. Some Christians were up in arms about this. There's nothing to be up in arms about. It's just a fantasy show. A fantasy movie, sci-fi fantasy movie. But that's meant to underscore, obviously using Christian motifs, underscore how significant or special Anakin is. Qui-Gon undertakes to train the boy. There's a whole kind of thing that plays out with Naboo and the Trade Federation, and one of the senators of Naboo, Palpatine, doubling as Darth Sidious. And if you cannot see the similarity between Darth Sidious for Insidious, okay, and Senator Palpatine of Naboo, then you must be blind. They're the same person.
There's actually a cool scene at the end of the first film when they're celebrating. The song that is played is a jovial version of the Emperor's theme, foreshadowing what is to come.
Okay, so
cool.
He's the Emperor. He's got Darth Maul there, also trying to stifle the moves of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. It's a kids' film with complex politics. Look, I like Episode 1. I enjoy it. It's nostalgic for me. I know that people, criticize it for, especially characters like Jar Jar Binks. Look, I get George Lucas's rebuttal to that. It is a kids' film. I take it as is. Episode 2, coming after that, set many years later, with Anakin re-encountering Padmé and falling in love with her. Now as a teenager being trained by Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anakin is headstrong. He's arrogant. He's rash. And he's haunted by dreams, premonitions. So look, the Jedi generally, because of their connection with the Force, there are parapsychological phenomena that they can be attributed to them. So they are prophetic or clairvoyance. They can tell the future, divine the future through dreams. Some of them have this gift from the Force. Others they all use a form of telekinesis, moving objects with the Force. Others are telepaths to a degree. They can sense when there's something wrong with someone, when the dark side is approaching. So,
power over the weak-minded as well.
Power over the weak-minded. This is a kind of hypnotism. Hypnotism. So, or forced suggestion. there's extrasensory phenomena associated with the Jedi that you can take out of parapsychology and the paranormal, or in a positive way, these are gifts that the Holy Spirit gives to Christian saints. So there are various ways of looking at this phenomena without getting perturbed, let's say. So he sees visions of his mother dying on Tatooine. Eventually, he's too late to save her, and he murders all of the Tusken Raiders that abduct his mother. The whole Trade Federation and Clone War thing is blown up out of proportion in episode 2. I think it's the weaker film, even though I like it. I still like it because I love the investigative element with Obi-Wan Kenobi trying to track down the source of the dart. Was it the dart shot?
A poison dart, aimed at Padmé.
Aimed at
trying to defuse
Padmé
the situation,
by a bounty hunter working for Jango Fett, Boba Fett's father, who is the prototype, the DNA prototype, biological prototype of all of the clones being produced on the planet Kamino, secretly for the Galactic Republic's new army.
Yeah.
Sifo Dyas.
That's right, ostensibly ordered by a Jedi, but who's gone missing.
Sifo Dyas.
Sifo Dyas.
I don't know what's called with these names. Yeah, okay. All right, so all of that's happening in episode 2, and towards the end, Jar Jar Binks, ironically, perhaps to annoy the fans, gives Senator Palpatine long-standing, because when does he become Chancellor? Does he become Chancellor at the end of episode 1?
At the end of episode 1, he has a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum.
Valorum, that's right.
Yeah. Played by Malcolm McDowell.
I vote for no confidence in Chancellor Valorum. Yeah, that's right, in the Senate on Coruscant. Okay, that's right. So he is Chancellor in Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and he's made kind of like a Chancellor in perpetuity.
Yeah.
By Jar Jar.
That's right.
So he's given these extra powers. So this kind of is an unfolding criticism of fascism, okay? It's meant to mirror the transition of the Roman Republic, the ancient Roman Republic, into the Roman Empire, which is something that Julius Caesar does by accruing to himself the role of dictator in perpetuity, ostensibly to safeguard the Republic. And then with his nephew Octavian/Augustus, the Roman Empire becomes the Imperium proper, an empire. So a similar thing is happening here, but Palpatine is behind it all, doubling as Darth Sidious, moving from Chancellor to Chancellor in perpetuity. He becomes Emperor in this film.
Yes. Yeah.
Want to add anything?
The most significant thing that happens probably in episode 2 is the marriage of Anakin and Padme in secret at the very end.
At the very end on Naboo, I hate sand.
That's right.
It's so annoying, gets under everything, but here everything is so soft. He's like licking his lips while he's touching it. It's so cringeworthy. The dialogue is cringeworthy. Look,
it's not his forte. It's not Lucas's forte.
Not Lucas's
themes are his forte.
Themes, archetypal themes are his forte. That's right. That's something that's missing in the sequel trilogy altogether. And Chris is going to talk a little bit about episode 3, which we watched tonight.
Yeah. So episode 3 takes place a few years after episode 2. So Anakin's a bit more mature. He's probably in his early 20s at this stage. Now he's been recalled from the Outer Rim in order to save the Chancellor, who's been abducted by Count Dooku. So he's the new apprentice of Sidious, who's introduced in episode 2, played with much glee by the late Christopher Lee.
Which is also around this time playing Saruman in the Lord of the Rings series, so they cast him also in Star Wars.
He's great. I love him in Star Wars.
He's
very hammy, and he's got that cool
hammy
fencing style lightsaber combat.
Yeah. It's all fun.
Yeah, and it starts off with Obi-Wan and Anakin saving the Chancellor from Dooku. Now, whilst they confront Dooku, Obi-Wan is temporarily incapacitated. And it's very interesting, when you see the Emperor abducted, he's actually sitting on a throne which foreshadows his role as the Emperor. So it's a very cool image. It very much echoes what you find in Return of the Jedi. So it's very cool.
It's very cool. And he's the master of puppetry, because Dooku's working for him, Grievous is working for him. He set up a situation where the Separatists, in other words, the Trade Federation and all those systems who have a financial disagreement, let's say, with the Galactic Republic, are fighting the army, the Clone War, the clone army of the Republic, he has set them up to fight against each other.
So he's conned them into think as their leader as Darth Sidious. Meanwhile, he has deceived the Republic as Palpatine. So he's actually contrived a war in order to accrue more and more power. There's a wonderful scene at the beginning of the film where Anakin disarms Dooku whilst Obi-Wan is incapacitated. He's actually unconscious. And there's the very famous line, "Do it," from Palpatine.
Everyone laughed in the cinema when he said that, by the way.
So he implores Anakin to actually assassinate, to murder, to execute Dooku. And he does, but he has some remorse. And then they have to flee because the ship that they've boarded is obviously still under the control of the Separatists. The ship itself, so to cut a long story short, they're captured in their attempt to save Palpatine. Anakin is actually holding Obi-Wan in his back. He's actually been quite heroic whilst leading Palpatine through the ship, but they get caught. And there's a confrontation with another big baddie, Grievous, General Grievous, who's meant to image Darth Vader to some extent. So he's a member of the Separatists who has actually surrendered his organic makeup to become a more powerful machine. And in the expanded universe, in the lore, it's revealed that he actually wanted to become a Jedi and he was resentful, so he opted to become this cyborg.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they confront Grievous. Grievous interrogates them firstly. They manage to escape. Grievous flees. The ship is damaged in the process and the ship is sinking. Anakin displays his heroics in safely landing this falling ship. And basically, they land. Obi-Wan allows Anakin to have the limelight. And then you find Anakin meeting up with his love, Padmé. And Padmé has some news to reveal to him, namely that she's pregnant. This is in secret, of course. And there's some confusion on Anakin's face. Obviously, this would be a scandal. Something which we mentioned before is that the Jedi Order is celibate. Okay, there are certain rules in the Jedi Order. Not only can you not have a spouse, you're not meant to have any attachments. Okay, this is an order which celebrates dispassion in order to cultivate compassion. Okay, so you detach yourself of all interests and you surrender all relationships in order to be a guardian of the galaxy, so to speak. Okay, so Padmé is also concerned about her political career, what it might mean for her, bearing in mind that she is still a senator in the Galactic Republic. So it would be a huge scandal. Anakin actually, to his credit, says it doesn't matter if it's disclosed, but she insists. And he takes it with joy ultimately. Now, the Jedi have a grievance with Palpatine by this point. He's not giving up his executive powers. He's been in office for too long. Okay, they sense that something is wrong, and as Mario mentioned before, they're able to intuit spiritually, so to speak, that there's something evil going on. Okay. Now, Anakin has befriended Palpatine. This is hinted at in episode 2, actually, as early as episode 1, where Palpatine actively affirms that he has a vested interest in Anakin's career. So they've established a friendship.
We'll be watching your career with great interest.
Yeah. And actually, Palpatine discloses to Anakin, well, he mentions to Anakin, rather, discloses to the audience that he knows of Anakin's slaughter of the Tusken Raiders, those who murdered his mother, which actually is his first fall to the dark side.
Did he implant the dream? That's an open question.
That's another question. Did he implant the dream? Because he has knowledge of it later on. Yeah. So the Jedi, they capitalize on Anakin's friendship with Palpatine. They effectively want him to spy on Palpatine because they don't trust him. But Palpatine is also manipulating Anakin and feeding into his ego. And he actually orders or requests that Anakin become a member of the Jedi Council, so he's appealing to his ego. He's appealing to his pride. Something that he's been contending with, as we saw in episode 2, for a long time. Okay, so if you get appointed to the council, it implies that you become a master. Okay, and Anakin has this notion that he is the chosen one, and by all accounts, he's saved the galaxy more times than anyone can count. So he feels as if he's earned it to some degree. Now, when he relates this to the Jedi Council, they affirm, look, we do appoint you to the council, but we do not grant you the rank of Jedi Master. And this has been memed.
It's not fair.
Yeah, this idea that Anakin is not a master has been memed to death, right? But it's a very powerful scene. You see this rage manifest. This is Vader coming to the fore.
And the disappointment on Obi-Wan.
Yeah, and Obi-Wan just shaking his head, like, where is this coming from? Just, it's palpable anger and dissatisfaction, and his pride is wounded. But he apologizes and takes a seat. And now the council are deliberating what they're going to do with the war. And they managed to ascertain that Grievous is stationed in a planet called Utapau with the remaining separatists, and also that the Wookiees are under attack by the separatist forces. The Wookiees are the race of the great Chewbacca, right? Another wonderful race of Star Wars. Very iconic character, Chewbacca, who makes an appearance in this film. And so
Yoda goes to
Kashyyyk in order to help the Wookiees, because apparently he has a pre-existing relationship with them. Now, Anakin has a word with Obi-Wan, and he affirms that he's disappointed in the council, that he's annoyed, and
that he trusts Palpatine.
Yeah, that he trusts Palpatine, that he's been a friend to him and a mentor to him. And Obi-Wan responds like, look, this is a great honor that you've been appointed to the council. Just be satisfied with that. But you must see that there's more going on here with Palpatine. There's something obviously wrong. But Obi-Wan has some remorse, because he clearly loves Anakin as a brother. So he's not the one forcing him to do this. It's the council.
To spy on Palpatine.
So Anakin...
See, it's already a very interesting, complex, layered story. The dialogue might fall flat in a few places, but already it's so much more interesting than any of the retreaded paths that we saw with the sequel trilogy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Not to mention all of the... Anyway, keep going, please.
That's cookie clutter Star Wars.
Cookie
cutter Star Wars. And so you have then Anakin approaching Palpatine at a performance, and this is a very eerie scene, very eerie music playing in the background. There was some kind of theatrical performance, very moody lighting. It's a masterful scene, actually. Ian McDiarmid is probably the best performer in Star Wars on account of this scene. Ian McDiarmid being the actor who plays Palpatine. So he sits there with Palpatine, and he's there to spy on him. But Palpatine is also, bearing in mind, a Sith Lord. So there are two major orders, so to speak, which have this rapport with the Force. The Jedi, who have this rapport with the Force, and they use it altruistically to help others. Okay, they're on the light side of the Force. There are also those who can manipulate the Force for their own selfish gain. These are the Sith, and their preoccupation is with power. Okay, that's their mission. Okay, they want to manipulate and control the world, and they've been acting in secret. So they actually have been effectively at the beginning of the prequel trilogy. They haven't been heard from for centuries. So Palpatine is really their heir. He is there to seize control. He is incredibly powerful. Okay, he is a disciple of a Dark Lord named Plagueis, whom he alludes to in a conversation with Anakin, this precise conversation they have at the theater. So, Anakin is there, and he's clearly sad because he's jaded with the Jedi. He doesn't want to be spying on his friend and mentor, who clearly understands his darker nature. And so, he relates as much, he hints as much, and then Palpatine tries to turn Anakin against the Jedi by affirming that they're just the same as the Sith in every way. All they want to do is seize more power for themselves. But Anakin isn't convinced. And he says, no, the Jedi are selfless. Okay. And he turns away, and then you see this shift in Palpatine's face. It's a masterful performance by Ian McDiarmid. And he changes his tact. And this is where the satanic emerges. Okay, this is very much like the serpent in the garden. Okay, he wants to seize on Anakin's fear here. So he tries to seduce him to the dark side. And what does he say? He relates a Sith legend. So he's able to intuit that Anakin is worried about the fate of his wife. Anakin believes that Padmé will die. So he is aware of this relationship. He is evidently aware of Anakin's vision. So he relates a Sith legend known as the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. And Plagueis had the power to manipulate these midichlorians to create and preserve life. Okay. So he's basically saying that you can learn this power. Okay. And Anakin says, is it possible to learn this power? And then he turns around and says, not from a Jedi. So he's already flirting with, the Sith, okay? Luring Anakin into the world of the Sith. So Anakin's evidently contemplating this. Now,
and there's a double play here. There's the insinuation based on this legend that, and it's an insinuation.
Yes.
That Palpatine himself had learned that power and created Anakin.
Yes, this hasn't been settled in the lore.
It's just an insinuation.
It's an insinuation, yeah. So there are two possible reasons for Anakin's conception. Some people suspect that it could have been Plagueis and Sidious manipulating Shmi, or that's Anakin's mother, or because of their experiments, the Force gave birth or generated Anakin.
Wow, okay.
Which is perhaps a more positive spin. We don't know. They actually haven't settled this question in Star Wars lore.
And the other insinuation is that the nightmares that Anakin has been having about Padmé's death since he found out that she was pregnant are being implanted in him by Palpatine.
Yeah. And again, you don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah.
But it's just implied.
Yeah, which was wonderful. So it shows that Lucas is actually actively encouraging you to think.
Yeah, it's very much a challenge. And now what unfolds more and more in this as the story progresses is that it's really the Jedi Order against the recapitulation of the Senate and the Republic within the person of Palpatine, with Anakin being used for either side.
Yes.
So he's caught in the middle.
He's caught in the middle
of two great factions. It's not like this is an ideological war that's being waged upon and through Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
It's
which actually gives you a lot of sympathy for him, because if you actually scrutinize, let's say, Mace Windu's conduct, so he's one of the great leaders of the Jedi Council, there's not much sympathy towards Anakin. They're actually being pretty harsh on him.
It's just making him turn towards Palpatine more and more, actually.
Yeah, and it's like it's like being between a rock and a hard place. So Anakin is forced to choose very soon, actually. So there's another encounter with Palpatine. Now, Anakin is ordered by Mace Windu to relate that Obi-Wan has defeated General Grievous. Okay, and Mace Windu says, "Go and relate this news to Palpatine, so we can see what his next actions will determine what his motives are." Because they're not certain that he is, because they've been searching for the Sith Lord. They're able to infer that someone is manipulating these events, okay? Not just Dooku, not Grievous, okay? So, Anakin goes with a view to relating this news. Before he has a chance to, however, Palpatine seizes the opportunity to disclose that he is indeed the Sith Lord. Okay, that he has knowledge of the dark side, and he implores Anakin to use his knowledge to save the love of his life, knowing full well that Anakin will go and relate this to the Jedi. Okay, but he's very charming. Like, this isn't the Palpatine that you saw in Return of the Jedi. He comes across as a very fatherly figure. In fact, he shows more affection, is far more flattering towards Anakin than the Jedi are. Even Obi-Wan is. Okay, so it's a very Luciferian trope that's being employed here.
Seductive persuasion. Yeah.
And if the original trilogy is about the hero's journey, I would say that the prequel trilogy is very much a conflation of classical and Christian or biblical motifs. That's what you find here. So this is almost like a Greek tragedy infused with like biblical content. So Anakin follows his instincts, and he immediately goes and discloses to Mace Windu that he's found the Sith Lord, that actually the Sith Lord has revealed himself. And Mace Windu says, okay, you wait here, because he knows that it's dangerous putting them together. And in fact, Mace Windu has already voiced some doubt as to whether Anakin is the chosen one. He's actively said he does not trust him. And even Yoda speculates perhaps the prophecy of the chosen one, which is what Qui-Gon believed, and actively set out to train Anakin, even without the Jedi Council's permission. Okay, perhaps that prophecy has been misread. So he says to him, look, you wait here, and if what you say is true, you will have gained my trust. And the Jedi deliberate, and they say, look, they've actually already deliberated by this point, and they've said if he refuses to relinquish his powers, we have an obligation to the Senate to seize control, okay, to depose him and seize control temporarily.
Yeah, and Yoda says a dark path. We're going to go down a dark path when we do this,
100%. So...
And Mace Windu does that.
He does just that.
Yeah, he does just that, yeah.
So he takes a few warriors with him, and they confront him, and then you see Sidious emerge, and it's actually this monstrous wail that he employs, and then they're fighting proper in his office.
Takes out his lightsaber.
Slaughters the Jedi that are with Windu, and the implication is that he's very, very powerful, because Windu has taken members of the council with him, so these are masters, the elite of the order. But he must anticipate that Anakin will come. So Anakin, in the interim, it's a very moving scene. You feel so sorry for him. He's deliberating what will happen, and he's weeping whilst he's deliberating what may happen to Padmé, and Padmé is looking off into the horizon. It's a very moving scene. So he's at a crossroads, and he goes to see what is happening, and he finds actually that Windu has defeated Palpatine. He's actually cornered him, and Palpatine is fighting back. So Windu actually wants to execute him, knowing full well that Sidious, or Palpatine, has full control of the Senate and the courts. Okay, so it's a risk to leave him alive. So you can understand why he'd be willing to execute Palpatine at this point. But Palpatine is fending him off using that Force lightning, which we mentioned earlier on. Okay, and he's actually Windu is deflecting that lightning, and Palpatine is being wounded and being disfigured into what we know him to be. Okay,
in Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi. So he looks awful, but at this point he's also pretending to be very weak, and he's saying, "Don't kill me, please."
I'm weak.
And he's looking in Anakin's direction, and Anakin's saying, "No, don't do this. He should stand trial." And Windu affirms it's too dangerous for him to stand trial. And then Anakin's motivation comes out. Anakin's self-interest is exposed, and says, "I need him," and he severs Mace Windu's hand
as Windu's about to kill.
He's about to deliver the killing stroke, and then Palpatine sees the opportunity and launches Windu out the window, effectively killing him.
That Force lightning,
With the Force lightning, he throws him out that window, and Anakin is incredibly distraught, and meanwhile it cuts to Yoda, who's intuiting that something tragic is happening. Okay, and this is the revenge of the Sith coming to the fore, hence the title of the film. And Anakin capitulates, and actually he kneels, just like Vader does in the original trilogy, before Palpatine, who now is risen and is triumphant and appears to be the Emperor.
He knights him,
and he says, "Rise, Lord Vader." Gives him a new identity, a new name, which is very interesting. So this is actually the death of Anakin and the emergence of Vader.
Once he does the ultimate evil, killing Mace Windu, who is the head of the Jedi Order.
It's like a priest turning on the Pope. Can't get much worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Wow. So Anakin, he's very pathetic. He's still like weeping and distraught, and he says, "Look, I'll do whatever you ask. I just want to save Padmé. I can't live without her." So you can see, like, he's still mourning the loss of his mum. He doesn't want to lose Padmé. He wants to have love in his life. Okay, I mean, granted, it's different love from that with a companion. Now he has a family on the horizon, right? So it's a palpable loss for him. And he says, "I'll do whatever you ask." And then basically they both confer, and this is actually Vader making a more willful alliance with Palpatine, and stating that he foresees that the Jedi will try to take control, because they've actually given him that impression, right? They were going to take control. So he's been seduced by the dark side by this point. And so Palpatine tells him, now all the Jedi effectively are enemy. They're going to come and kill us if they find out what has happened. So even your friend Obi-Wan is not to be trusted. And he says to him, go and purge the temple. And this is probably the most tragic scene in the film.
Yeah, well, he simultaneously gives Order 66, where all the clones throughout the galaxy execute the Jedi commanders who are leading their squadrons.
Yeah.
So that's happening while at the same time Anakin
He's marching on the temple.
Marches on the temple, kills all of the Jedi in the temple, including the younglings, the children, trainees, which is very, very sad. There was an idiot in the cinema going, yes, kill them, and clapping resounded. And I'm like, even as a joke, that isn't funny. Because this is the one thing Chris and I were talking about afterwards that's irredeemable about Anakin. The fact that there is some good in him that Padmé acknowledges,
and Luke later
and even Luke acknowledges later on, is a miracle.
Yeah.
Because he's crossed the threshold now into child slaying.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no greater evil than that, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
the stuffing out of innocence.
Yeah, well, that's right. He snuffs out innocence. Especially that little child says to him, what does he say to him?
There's too many of the Master Skywalker. What are we going
to
do?
And then you see Anakin's lightsaber ignite.
Gosh.
And, there were some people clapping in the cinema. You don't clap at something like that. That's the Greek tragedy reaching its nadir, its lowest point. How do you come back from that?
Yeah, 100%.
How do you come back from that?
100%.
Yeah.
It's like the herald slaying of the innocents. It's like it's the worst thing
it's
you
the
can
worst
possibly
thing, exactly.
imagine. And that's the point of no return for Anakin. But he's been promised by Palpatine that the more he surrenders to the dark side and gives into these dark impulses, the stronger he'll become, and that will enable him to save Padmé.
Yeah.
But at what cost? Because Padmé is a beautiful character. She's actually the representation of virtue and the one who's been keeping him sane. So she represents the ideal feminine. And in this one, she's very motherly. She's very
to him, yeah.
Even towards him. So she's very innocent in this film. In the second one, she's a bit more feisty. She comes across more like her daughter Leia. In the third,
she's a warrior in the second one.
In the third one, she's more of the benevolent feminine. Okay, and she's there to support Anakin. So saving her whilst betraying everything that she represents. It's awful. It's a legitimate tragedy. So he's been fooled into thinking that the more he does, the stronger he'll become. But it's also appealing to that other side of his character, the side that wants power, the side that wants control. So, Obi-Wan now has been attacked by this point, okay? And he manages to escape the attack from his own squadron. And basically, only him and Yoda, from what we know, have survived by this point. And they receive assistance from Bail Organa, who's a senator, who's a friend of Padmé, and will become Leia's adopted father. And so the confrontation is about to ensue. So there's a distress call, which is a trap which has been set at the Jedi Temple to lure all the remaining Jedi in, and Obi-Wan and Yoda disable that distress call. But Obi-Wan, with Yoda, they see that the children have been struck by a lightsaber, and you can see Obi-Wan begin to intuit what's happened. Okay.
Yeah.
And they look at the recordings, and he actually sees Anakin slaughtering the children, and he can't see anymore. But Yoda says to him, "Look, it's up to us to destroy the Sith, and you're not powerful to take on Palpatine."
Yeah.
So it's a heartbreaking scene. Like the mentor now has to take on his apprentice, and effectively the older brother has to confront the younger brother. So this familial kind of conflict, this dynastic kind of conflict, it's part and parcel of Star Wars. It's very much akin to like the Greek myths.
It's very Greek tragedy, and this simultaneously Anakin is slaughtering the separatists.
Yeah, he's been ordered to
slaughter the separatists.
The leaders of the separatists. Yeah.
Yeah, the leaders of the separatists
on Mustafar, which is an image of hell.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. So basically, Anakin is in hell doing the devil's bidding by destroying the remnants of Palpatine's setup, because he'd set up all these leaders of the separatist armies for failure and for death. So getting rid of the collateral here. So he goes in and he slaughters them, even though they're begging for their lives, while lava is flying all over the place. And then there's that scene where he's looking out into the flames and his eyes are all yellow.
And he's crying.
He's crying, but he's like possessed, right?
Yeah.
So he's burning in hell, and it's actually another descent into Hades motif, because he has willingly gone into Hades and become its servant.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan has to enter to Hades
And Padmé.
and Padmé
Yeah.
in order to Padmé tries to redeem him.
Yeah.
So she enters hell. Mustafar is hell.
Yeah.
It's the lava planet.
100%.
Right? So Padmé enters hell in order to redeem him. Obi-Wan enters in order to destroy him.
Destroy him. Yeah, it's fantastic. And the tragedy is that when Padmé confronts him,
Symbolism, anyway.
Yeah, the phenomenal symbolism. When Padmé confronts him, he is delusional by this point, and he basically affirms that he now has enough power not only to save her, but to rule the galaxy with her. So she, throughout the prequel trilogy, represents democratic values. So he has betrayed her fundamentally as a person, and she's weeping, saying, "Where you've gone now, I can't follow." Meanwhile, Anakin has one eye on Obi-Wan, who has, and this is a tragedy for Padmé, who has snuck aboard her ship. So she's not aware that he's there, but there's that jealousy, that resentment he's always had towards Obi-Wan coming to the fore now.
He sees Obi-Wan in the dream.
Yes.
In the prophetic dream
That's
of
right.
Padmé dying. Anakin sees Obi-Wan there, and at some point he asks, "Why was Obi-Wan here?" After he saw, so there's this jealousy. Are you working with him? Is there something more going on?
And, and Obi-Wan has just displayed the conduct of an older brother, even towards Padmé, because he actually has disclosed by this point that he knows that Anakin's the father of her children. So he hasn't cared. He actually represents the ideal Jedi, not bogged down by the legalism, in imitation of his master Qui-Gon.
Yeah. Do you remember the scene where he says to her, "Is Anakin the father?" And she doesn't say anything, and he looks at her and goes, "I'm so sorry," and walks off. Look, this movie has gravitas.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It has more gravitas than all the Star Wars films combined. I think only it's symmetrical to Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back.
And maybe the last scenes of Episode 6.
And maybe the last scenes of Episode 6. There's nothing in the sequel trilogy, which we'll address another time.
No.
We'll return to the sequel trilogy in another video, I think. We'll end with the final comments on, because it's already gone for an hour.
100%. So maybe we can discuss
because that can be another video.
the Filoni's attempt at course correcting.
Yeah, that's
sure.
Definitely
Sounds good.
We should do that. Yeah.
So the Battle of the Heroes, as it's been dubbed, and we have to give tremendous credit to John Williams, because the score in this film is absolutely amazing, particularly the title track, Battle of the Heroes. So Obi-Wan now confronts Anakin, and basically it's the best lightsaber duel, I would say. Some people say it's in Episode 1 between Darth Maul, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Obi-Wan Kenobi. I beg to differ. I think Mario would agree that
I think this is the best one.
Because you're emotionally invested. These brothers are fighting to the death, and the fate of the galaxy is on the line. Now, Obi-Wan manages to win. How does he win? He gets the high ground morally and literally, okay? So they're fighting through the midst of hell, and there's a tremendous display of acrobatics and sword fighting. Apparently it took them months to choreograph this, and it credits both of them, because they did it all themselves, no stunt work. Now, he has the high ground literally, and Anakin, his hubris is his downfall. Yeah. So he attempts to leap over Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan severs his arms and his legs, and Anakin tumbles down. One arm and both legs, and Anakin tumbles down towards the lava, and he ignites. So not only is he in hell, but he is in torment. He is on fire, figuratively and literally. And you see his body burn. It is, particularly seen on the big screen, very confronting. It's the most violent scene in Star Wars, and he is yelling in anguish. And not only that, he is yelling, "I hate you, I hate you." And Obi-Wan initially walks away, but he turns around, and it's the most heartbreaking scene in Star Wars. And he says, "You were my brother, Anakin. I loved you. You were supposed to save the galaxy, not leave it in darkness, bring balance to the Force, rather, not leave it in darkness." And he leaves. And there's a wonderful juxtaposition in the subsequent scenes between the emergence of Vader proper, where the armor is bestowed on Vader, because this is the birth of Vader, but the death of Padmé. So Padmé has not been injured per se. She's been knocked unconscious by Anakin, but she surrenders the will to live. So this is like very much the Greek tragedy, the tragic romance. She doesn't want to live without Anakin, which attests to how sacred their bond was. And she is dying whilst delivering Luke and Leia, and she names them, which is very important.
Into the arms of Obi-Wan.
Into the arms of Obi-Wan, which it's a very moving scene. Meanwhile, Anakin is screaming in anguish and being modified by all this machinery, and then the mask comes down. That's the death of Anakin.
Yeah.
And then he emerges as she dies. And he asks, but his first, this is the tragedy, his first intuition is to turn to Palpatine and say, where is Padmé? Is she all right? And then the Emperor affirms, it seems as if in your anger,
it's a lie.
You killed her. It's a lie. And it's just palpable, no,
because I felt her.
I felt her. She was alive. And then there's this, no.
And Palpatine is smiling.
And Palpatine is smiling. But that no, so that is mirrored in the editing done by George Lucas. When else does Vader display this vulnerability? When he sees his son dying. He says, no, and then he picks up Palpatine and throws him into the furnace, so to speak. And there's a series of very moving images. Firstly, you have Padmé's funeral, where she's actually holding a medallion that the boy Anakin had given her. It's a very moving scene.
Like rosary beads, yeah.
So it's almost like rosary beads, and she's adorned beautifully in her casket.
Like a Madonna, yeah.
It's a very moving scene. And then you have Yoda, Obi-Wan and Senator Amidala conferring as to what should happen to the children. Now, not Amidala, Organa. Senator Organa adopts Leia. And then Yoda suggests Obi-Wan, why not send Luke to his family? Because
after he fails against fighting...
Yoda, yes, we should emphasize this. Do you want to mention a few things?
So before Vader is created by Palpatine in the kind of iconic suit, there's a massive fight scene simultaneous. It's happening simultaneously to Obi-Wan fighting Anakin. Yoda is fighting Palpatine, and Yoda loses. They fight in the Senate chamber, which is the death of the Senate as well, symbolized by that. And then at the end of the fight scene, where Yoda escapes with Senator Organa, because he gets defeated by Palpatine intuits, again, through this remote telepathy, participation in the Force, that Anakin was in danger, and then he finds him burnt up on Mustafar and puts the suit on him and all that kind of thing. But the very final scene, that's where we're at now.
So in episode 2 you actually find out that Shmi remarried, and that there's a stepbrother for Anakin. This is Owen Lars. So Luke has some family, so to speak, on Tatooine, his father's homeworld. And so Obi-Wan takes the boy to his family but promises to watch over him. And there's a very, very moving scene where Owen and his wife Beru are holding the young Luke after he's just been handed to them by Obi-Wan, and they're staring off into the twin suns, which is actually the same set of suns in which Luke looks at whilst dreaming of his future. And obviously the twin suns are an image of Luke and Leia being, the hope of the galaxy, and Obi-Wan looking on. So it's a perfect setup into episode 4. It's perfect. So to cut a long story short, there's a wonderful parallel between the third film of each trilogy. So you have the distortion of Anakin at the end of episode 3. If you look at the films chronologically, if you watch them chronologically, he surrenders his identity to evil, but at the very end of the canonical Star Wars, you see his image restored, because the last scene of Return of the Jedi is Luke looking at the spirits of Obi-Wan, Yoda, and a restored Anakin. And George Lucas, to his credit, edited the film and inserted Hayden Christensen. So Anakin,
not the original actor who played Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi in 1983.
Actually, there are like 3 actors who played him. One for the fight scenes, one for standing around,
one for his voice,
and
as well,
one for his face, and another for his voice. So 4 actors. But you have there Anakin restored. It's like if you look at it from a Christian perspective, it's like the image of God being restored in humanity through repentance, through the reattainment of virtue, through conquering one's passions finally and displaying altruism and compassion. So a beautiful symmetry between the prequel trilogy and original trilogy, which unfortunately was not carried on with this sequel trilogy, and that's something we can discuss perhaps.
Yeah, we'll return to the sequel trilogy and look at Filoni's attempts to course correct, especially in relation to the whole Chosen One narrative in relation to Anakin, because that's dumped by the sequel trilogy. They had no idea what they were doing.
And perhaps we should mention as well that George Lucas's description of that, his definition of that is that Anakin brings balance to the Force by finally destroying the Sith. So the dark side is the imbalance. Okay, the Chosen One had been foretold to bring balance to the Force. He does so by destroying Sidious and inadvertently Palpatine. Sidious or Palpatine, and then his own person indirectly and becoming Anakin again. But that's embellished, and that's something we can discuss via the Clone Wars and subsequent media. So.
And that subsequent media is trying to correct the narrative that ensues,
which completely undermines
which brings
that.
Palpatine back. Yeah, somehow he came back. The most stupid line in any film ever in The Rise of Skywalker. But let's not sully this particular video by talking about the sequel trilogy and its many flaws. Although it had good moments, but those moments they don't make up for unbalancing the symmetry of episodes 1 to 6 and the consistency there. Friends, like, subscribe, go see in a spirit of celebration Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith.